Hello everyone, welcome back to the series. This is episode 6 of building our chat app in C from scratch. In the last episode, we built our input box system. We added features like showing our cursor on the screen. We implemented our cursor movement using our left and right arrow keys. We implemented box space, so we can edit text and all of that. I also promised you guys in the last episode that we'd implement a chat server in today's video, but we're not gonna be focusing on that right now in today's video. Instead, we're gonna be making our input box system more advanced to support things like cursor blinking and also our clipboard, so we can paste text using our ctrl V and our ctrl C to copy text. If you guys are enjoying the series, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button, and let's jump right into the video. Alright guys, so here's what I realized. So in our previous episode, we implemented this interpressed thing, but testing it a while ago, it didn't work. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna fix that. So right here where we have this if interpressed logic, we're gonna change it so that it says if in up input box dot interpressed. Wait, before I actually do that, let me show you guys it isn't working. So if I run my build script, when we type something, then we press enter, nothing is happening. Why is that? That's because we need to change it to this input box interpressed instead of using the old variable. So we're just gonna say if up input box dot interpressed, then we're gonna call our message list add function. We're gonna get rid of this message buffer because we're not using that anymore, and we're just gonna pass our up input box dot data instead, and then we're gonna get rid of this free whatever. We're then gonna say call our input box clear ampersand up input box right here. And you can see we're setting our interpress back to false, so we don't send a message multiple times. So we're gonna get rid of this, and we are gonna modify our input box clear function so that it resets our interpress as well. So we'll just write input box interpress within our clear function equals to false. And once we do that, guys, let's try and test out, and it should start sending messages whenever we press enter. So if we type hello, enter, you can see it shows up now. We can type how are you, everything is good, awesome bro, and you guys can see it's working now. So So now that we have done that, guys, we're gonna be implementing our cursor blink functionality. Because right now, in our application, this green cursor that we can move, it's just static. It doesn't move. It doesn't have any animation. And looks kind of boring, so we're gonna animate it so it can blink and all of that. So let's focus on that right now. So to do this, we will need to introduce some properties to our input box definition.h header file. So we'll introduce some Boolean variables. Let's call one bool cursor blink. Because what if we don't actually want our cursor to blink, guys? We just want it to be static. We'll also have another Boolean variable. Let's call it cursor blinking. For actually when the cursor is blinking. We'll then have a unsigned int 64t. Let's call it cursor timeout. We'll also have an int for our, and we'll call it cursor blink timeout 6. Wait, it should be a double. Yeah, we'll make it a double. What if we also do not want to show our cursor on the screen, guys? We'll introduce another flag. Let's call it cursor show. Alright, so now that we have introduced those flags, guys, let's actually try to implement the blinking functionality now. Alright, so we're gonna go in our inputbox.c. We're gonna go into our init function. We're gonna introduce a new parameter where it's gonna take in a double. Let's call it blink underscore cursor blink 6. Alright, let's just call it cursor timeout 6. Yeah, let's also go back to our input box def.h. Let's just call it cursor timeout 6 as well. Alright. So we'll then say input box cursor blink. We will set that to true by default. We'll then say input box cursor show. We will set that to true by default. We'll then say input box cursor timeout 6 is equal to cursor timeout 6. We'll also, we have our cursor blinking thing too. We'll set our input box cursor blinking. let's just let it be. It will automatically be false as long as our input box's element members are all null. So we don't need to do anything. All right. So we will modify our input box create function to accept our cursor timeout 6. So we'll say int cursor timeout 6, and then we'll just pass in our cursor timeout 6 right here. We'll then just copy these things and modify our prototypes. Right, and let's do it for our create one now. Alright, so this looks pretty good now. So now let's focus on making our cursor actually blink. So above here, guys, we're gonna say if not cursor, if not input box cursor show within our render cursor function, then we're just gonna return and once we do that, we're gonna implement our cursor blink now. So let's say we want to hide our cursor, guys. Without showing it, we can just set this return. Wait. Yeah, so if we set our cursor show to false, then our cursor will not display. Now to actually let the blinking work, we will check if input box cursor blink is enabled. Because what if we just want our cursor to just remain static, you know? Alright, so if cursor blink is enabled, then here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna say if not input box cursor timeout, so like if it's equal to 0, then we'll say input box cursor timeout equals to SDL get ticks 64. So we'll use the get tick 64 function as our timer. We will then say plus our input box cursor timeout 6, which is our time that we will give in seconds for our timeout function. We'll multiply that by 1000. Since we're operating in milliseconds, And then right here after that we'll say else if. Oh yeah, right here now we'll just say input box cursor blinking equals to true. So once we have set our cursor blinking equal to true, we'll then have another else if check. We'll say if input box cursor blinking and SDL get ticks 64 is greater than or equal to our input box cursor timeout, then we will wait if our cursor is blinking, if our cursor is blinking, then we will check the if statement here. We'll say if SDL get ticks 64 is greater than or equal to your input box cursor timeout, then we will say input box cursor blinking equal to false. Then we'll say input box cursor timeout is equal to 0. And then the end right here, guys, we'll just say return. So let's walk through this now. So we check if our cursor blink is enabled. If it is enabled, then we'll say if not input box cursor timeout, then we will initialize that cursor blink into true. And if our cursor is blinking, we will check if the time was passed. If the time hasn't passed, then we'll just return. If it is passed, then we'll reset that. So right here, guys, we'll just say yeah, let's run our code now, guys. Let's test it out. Oh, yeah, let's go in our app.c real quick. And let's add our so in our input box init function call, you will add a new parameter, which will be our blink timeout. So we'll make it be 0.5 seconds. And let's rerun our build.bat script. So we can almost see. Yo, I thought we just saw something right there. So let's see real quick. Alright, so there's something else we'll need to do. So if our cursor is blinking, still get tick 64. Right. We'll say right down here, guys. We'll say not input box. Wait, give me a second, guys. Let me think. So guys, you're right here. We're setting our cursor blinking to true. But here's what we're gonna do. We're not gonna do that right there. Instead, we're gonna say if the cursor is not blinking, and if our cursor is not blinking, and the SDL get ticks 64, is greater than or equal to our input box cursor timeout, then we will say input box cursor blinking equals to true. So that means we will have a timeout for when our cursor is not blinking and a timeout for when our cursor is supposed to blink. Now if our cursor is blinking, meaning it will like disappear, then we will just return from here. And then once the timeout passes again, and we'll also need to reset our cursor timeout. So we'll say input box cursor timeout equal to 0, so that this will run. So if we rerun our script now, guys, our build script, our cursor should be blinking. Let's see what happens. Alright, let's type hello world. Oh, nice. So our cursor blinking has been implemented now, guys. But you can see here, if you look, guys, it's disappearing meanwhile we're moving. So let's fix that issue. So we're gonna create a function to reset our cursor blink. So we're gonna say let's make it a void input box reset cursor blink input box t input box. We'll then say, let's go back into our input box.c. Alright, so in our handle events function, whenever we get a left arrow key event, for example, we'll say we'll call our input box reset cursor blink function and passing our input box as a parameter. Also, when we press our box space or right arrow key, also our box space as well. Yeah, we can also remove these debugging information for now. And we'll also do it for when we're entering stuff, because we don't want our cursor to be disappearing meanwhile we are typing. So let's implement this cursor blink function. So void, let's go above here. So we'll say void input box reset cursor blink up underscore t. No, not up underscore t, just our input box underscore t input box. And we'll just say input box time cursor timeout equals to 0. And we'll say input box cursor blinking equals to false. So that will prevent our cursor from blinking. So it will start over, Yeah. So now guys, if we rerun our build script, and we start moving our cursor, or we type something, it should stop blinking meanwhile we're typing. If we hit backspace, cursor stops blinking now. Alright. So now guys, let's see what else we could implement now. Text selection. So we're gonna be implementing text selection now. So just like in any text editor, like if we open up Notepad for example, and we type something like how are you, and we press like shift then our right arrow key, it allows us to select text, So we'll implement text selection. So let's start doing that now. So we will go to our input box def.h and we'll define some types. Let's define a enum. Let's call it input underscore selection direction. We'll have a input selection left, input selection right. And we'll say guys, we'll define some other stuff. So within our input data structure, we'll introduce some new variables. We'll call it a size t selection start and a size t selection end. So we'll store the start index where the selection is and the end index where the selection is. Alright. So now that we have done that, we're gonna define some function prototypes for adding our selection. So we'll say void input box underscore add selection left input box t input box. We'll say void input box add selection right input box t input box. We'll copy these prototypes. We'll go into our input box.c. And let's just paste our prototypes in or inputbox.c. Alright. Yeah, we can close some of these tabs in VS Code. Alright. So, let's define how our add selection left will work. So, we'll say if or we'll say input data underscore t pointer input is equal to ampersand input box input. We'll say if input selection direction. Oh yeah, so we forgot to define something. We'll define a int and let's call it selection direction. We'll then say if input selection direction is equal to input selection right. Because guys, if we open up Notepad again and we type something like hello and we do a selection right, so we click shift then right arrow key. If we click the left, you can see it undoes those things. So we're gonna handle that. So in order to do this, we're gonna say if our input selection direction is equal to input selection right, then we'll say and or input selection or input selection end is equal to that. So if it's like not 0, then we'll just say a decrement or input selection end by 1, so minus minus, and then we will return we'll only decrement on as long as our input selection end is greater than our input selection start. And then we'll just return right here. So once we decrement, meaning we're moving down like that, right? So we're subtracting 1 each time. We'll then handle our actual selection left now. So we'll say input if not So we'll need to set our selection end and our selection start. Right, so let's define another variable, guys. Let's call it selection count. So right here where we have this, we can, instead of doing this, we can just say, or if our input selection count, right, so if it's not 0, then it will be valid. and we'll just keep decrementing our selection end, and then we'll also decrement our selection count. We'll then say if not input selection count, then if we're going left, we'll initialize our input selection end. And remember, we're gonna be moving our cursor as well, guys. So if we have a selection right, we'll also need to decrement our cursor position by 1 as well. We'll then set our input selection end equal to our input cursor position right at the end here, guys. We'll ensure that we increment our selection count, which will be the number of characters that we have selected, and we'll then initialize our selection start equal to our input cursor pos. But before that, we'll decrement our current cursor position by 1, and that should be our add selection left function. Now let's do it for our right. So we'll write input data underscore t input equals ampersand input box input. We'll then say if input selection direction is equal to input selection left. So if we did left selection and we want to go back to the right, we will undo all of those operations. So selection count, then we'll say input cursor pos plus input selection end minus input selection end we went to the right, so we need to decrease our selection end, right? We went to the left. Yeah, we still need to decrease our selection end. Yeah. We'll then say input selection end minus. We'll then say input selection count minus and then return. Then at the end, we need to ensure we increment our selection count to actually set our right selection. So we'll say input cursor pos. So we went left. We're then going right. So instead, it shouldn't be our selection end in here. It should be our selection start that we should increase by 1. So we'll do input selection start plus in here. Then we'll say input cursor, if not, input selection start, no, selection count. Then we'll say, we'll initialize our start index. So we'll say input selection start equals to input cursor pos, and then we'll just say input selection end equals to input cursor pos. But before we do that, we'll increment our cursor position by 1. Yeah, and this should be it for our selection. Yeah, so now guys, let's create another function, prototype. So we'll create a void input box, add selection. It will take in a input box t input box. It will take in a int selection direction. Let's just call it direction. And let's copy this function prototype. And we'll paste it in here. We'll then say if our direction is equal to input selection left, then we will call our input box add selection left function on our input box. We'll then say otherwise. We'll just say input box add selection right input box. Right. We'll introduce some other stuff too, guys. So let's go in our input box def.h, and we'll introduce like our selection color. So our selection color. So in our input box structure, we'll have a SDL color. Let's call it a SDL color. We'll call it selection color. And we'll modify our init function so we can specify a color for our selection. So it will accept a SDL color, selection color. And then we'll set our input box selection color equal to our selection color. And let's do that for our create function as well. So we'll say SDL, we'll say SDL color, selection color, and we'll just pass in our selection color as a parameter, and we'll just modify our prototypes in our header file to accept those new parameters that we introduced. Let's do that for our init function now, or our init prototype, and paste it in there. Alright, so now that we have done that, guys, let's actually start testing out our selection. But in order to do that, we'll go in our render characters function, and we will do some if statements now. So we'll say if, so yeah, we'll render our or a background for each character, right, based on our current index and all of that. So we'll say if input box yeah, let's define a input data t pointer input ampersand input box input to simplify this typing, you know. So we'll say input selection. If input selection start, yeah, we'll say if I, so meanwhile we're rendering our characters, we'll say if I is greater than or equal to our input selection start, and we'll then say I is less than or equal to our input selection end. And then we will do this. We'll say SDL set render draw color up render color underscore 2 param input box selection color SDL render draw rect up render ampersand input characters at index I dot canvas, and we'll also do this for the filling operation as well. Alright, so this should be fill. Alright, so we have an error in our input box.h. Where is that? Oh, that's because we forget to add a semicolon right there. So let's try to test out our selection now, guys. So we'll compile our code by running our build.bat script. Alright, so we have an error. Oh, that's because we'll need to update our up.c so we can specify a selection color. So let's make our selection color be blue. So we'll add a parenthesis SDL color. We'll specify the RGBA values. So we'll say the red value will be 0, the green value will be 0, and the blue value will be fully blue, and our alpha value will be fully opaque. So let's run our build script now, and let's see what happens. Oh. Alright, so you guys can see there's a selection working right there, but for some reason, yeah, it's not supposed to show that anyways. Yeah, we should only do it whenever our selection count is set. So we'll put a check right here. We'll say if input selection count and yeah, and that should be it. But here's what we forgot to do, guys. We forgot to implement our shift right arrow keys thing. So up here we'll say if we'll add a check up here. We'll say if SDL get mod state ampersand SDL k mod SDL k shift. Let's do left shift. Then let's check something real quick. Alright, so these are the definitions of our keys that SDL has. Alright, so yeah, kmod left shift, we have kmod right shift, and we have kmod shift. That's what we want. So instead of doing left shift, we'll say kmod kmod shift. Then inside of here, guys, we'll do a switch up event.key.keysim.sim, and we'll say case SDL k left, then we'll break case SDL k right, and we'll break, and we'll also break down here as well. This should be keysim. We'll say if we do a left, then we'll just call inputbox underscore add selection left, add selection, and we'll write our input box, then input selection left, and then for right we'll say input box add selection input box input selection right. So now if we rerun our code, let's test out our selection implementation now. If we type hello, let's try shift. Okay, it's almost working. It worked right there for a second. Like you guys could see, if I type hello, then I go here, then I press shift, you can see the blue is selected, but it has a bug in it. So let's fix that bug. Let's go into our add selection left function and see. So we forgot to do something, guys. We forgot to change our direction, right? So we need to ensure, because if, let's say if the selection direction was right, then we'll need to reset it to selection left once we undo all the right selection. And then we'll need to do the same thing for our right selection. If it was left, then we'll change our input selection direction equal to our input selection right. So now, guys, let's test this out. So if we type hello and we press shift, you guys can see it's almost working, but there's a bug. still. So let's review our code. So we need to have an out of bounds check, guys. So we don't want our selection end to go past or character count. So let's solve that issue. So we'll add a check up here. We'll say if input Alright, let's say if our input box selection end wait a minute, if we're going left, we need to ensure that our cursor position is not 0. So we'll say if in our selection left, we'll say if not input cursor pos, then we'll just return. We also need to ensure that our input box is not empty, so we'll say if not input characters and or not input cursor pos, then we just return. We'll also do something similar to our selection right. We'll say if not input box characters or input, wait, if not input characters or not input or input cursor pos, is greater than our input is greater than or equal to our input character count, then we'll just return, because we don't want our cursor position to go out of bounds meanwhile we're incrementing it. So we can rerun our build script or recompile it. So if we type hello, let's try shift, and it's almost there. Alright, so we have left and our right selection working. Let's fix this last bug. So if we do shift then left, it select 2 characters instead, and that's not supposed to happen. Alright, so we initialize our input start to equal to our input cursor position. Oh, that's because in our render characters, guys, function, this should be I is less than or input selection end. Yeah, let's test this out now. So if we type hello, Alright, now we are only selecting one character at a time. So yeah guys, hello world. Alright, so whenever we press enter on our keyboard guys, we want to clear our selection also. So let's go in our input box clear function. Let's implement a new function. Let's call it void input box clear selection input box key input box. We'll then say our size ti equals to 0, I is less than our input box input dot. Yeah, we don't even need to do that guys. The only thing we need to say is input box input dot selection start is equal to 0 and input box input selection end is equal to 0 and input box input selection count is equal to 0. And then that's literally all we need to do. So in our input box clear function, the only thing we need to do is just call our input box clear selection function, and we pass in a pointer to our input box. So let's copy this thing as into our input box.h function, and let's recompile our code. So if we type hello, and if we select everything, we press enter. Next time we start typing, that shouldn't happen. We press enter. It's supposed to clear our selection, but why didn't it clear it for some reason? Oh, we didn't save it, that's why. We didn't save our code. Alright, so if we type hello now, select everything, enter, we type something again, our selection will clear. Alright, so let's implement something else now guys. Let's implement copying. So clipboard copying. So we can copy text to our clipboard. Because here's our clipboard, and we want to be able to copy text, and we want to be able to paste or insert text. So before we do that, we'll need to implement a get selection function. So we'll have a void input box get selection data input box t input box function. It will return a char pointer. So we'll say char pointer selection data is equal to null, and we'll just return our selection data at the end of our function. We'll then say for size ti is equal to 0, I is equal to, or so let's first define a input data t pointer input equals to ampersand input box input, and we'll just say size ti is equal to input selection start, and I is less than input selection end I plus plus. We'll then say we'll use our string concat str function that we implemented. guys can see it's really useful right now. And we can say string concat str, we pass in a pointer to our char pointer data variable. We'll then say input characters at index I dot UTF-8 char, and we'll just concatenate everything. So now we'll be able to actually copy our input. And just to show you guys that it's actually working right, let's implement an input box print selection function. And we'll just say input data t pointer input equals ampersand input box input for size ti equals to input selection start I is less than input selection end I plus plus. We'll say printf modulus s input selection underscore input characters at index I dot UTF-8 char, and at the end we'll just do a printf new line right here, and then we'll just say printf selection data colon selection data is colon new line, and let's just create our prototypes. So we'll just copy and paste in here. Alright, so let's copy or get selection data thing too as well. Alright, and our semicolon there. Alright, so in where we're handling the event, each time we add a selection in our we'll just call our input box print selection input box function. So input box print selection input box. We have an error in here. Where is that? Alright, no, it's not there anymore. So let's recompile our code. Alright, so if we type something, guys, and let's say we add a selection, you can see it prints out our selection data is L. We select L again, LL, O. If we select something like H, E. Alright, so we need to fix that. So we selected that. Let's try type hello again, and let's add a selection again, starting from H, E, L, L, O. You guys can see it's getting printed in our console right here. So let's focus on actually fixing this bug, because we cannot really whenever we add selection, if we move our arrow keys, it doesn't deselect anything. And if we open up Notepad again, for example, guys, and we type something like hello, and we do a shift right, then we press our left arrow key, it undoes all the selection that we have done. So let's do that. So the only thing we need to do here is in the part where we're handling our cursor movement, we'll say if we're going to the left and we have selection, we'll just say if, let's define something up here. So we'll define our input data t pointer input equals ampersand input box input. We'll say if input selection count, then we will set our input box input dot cursor position equals to our input selection start index, and we will just call our input box clear selection function and pass in our input box. And then we'll ensure that we break. Alright. And we'll do the same thing for our right arrow key. Alright, so if we'll say if input selection count, then we'll just say, and we press the right arrow key, then we'll jump to the end position. So we'll say input box input dot input, let's just say input cursor pos right here to simplify that, and up here as well, is equal to selection end, and we clear our selection and then we just break. Alright, so now that we have done that, oh, also guys, if we open up Notepad again, you know, Notepad is pretty useful right now, lol. Alright, so we type hello world, let's say we select these two things and we press backspace, it deletes all of that. Let's do that for our backspace now. So the only thing we need to do we'll just copy this and we'll paste it underneath our backspace for now. So our backspace. So we'll essentially say for size t, I is equal to our input selection end let's set our input cursor position first equal to our input selection end. Then we'll set our I equal to that, and we'll say I is greater than or input selection start semicolon I minus minus. We'll then say input box underscore box space ampersand, no, just pass in our input box, and then we call our input box clear selection function, and that should be it. We have an error right here. Yeah, this should be our arrow operator. And let's recompile our code. Okay, let's get rid of some of these debugging stuff, guys. These print statements. Let's go in our print selection thing, print selection function, and let's remove this new line here, and let's recompile our code. So if we type hello and we press shift, then we press left, it deselects everything. So that means if we try to select here, it deselects everything. Then we do that. You guys can see it's working. We press right, left, deselects everything, or right, it deselects everything. If we select these two L's, then we hit backspace, it deletes everything. We select that, deletes everything. We select that, deletes everything. Select that, deletes everything. Let's type hello world just like in Notepad. And let's select these O and the comma, then the space, then we backspace, it deletes everything. You know, so now guys, we have like this thing we can type in now, you know, and it literally works, guys. Yeah, it's almost a full-fledged chat application. So let's actually test out our get selection data function by implementing the copy feature for our clipboard. So let's do that right now. So we'll have within our SDL key down event, we'll have a check. So we'll say the else if right here, we'll say else if SDL get mod state ampersand k mod control, and then we'll say switch. Wait, so if we hit our control key, right, then we'll say a switch up event.key.keySim case SDLK underscore A. Yeah, we'll implement Control A, which selects everything, just like in a actual text editor like Notepad. Hello world, Control A, selects everything. So we'll implement that. So let's actually implement that right now. Let's just write these SDLKC variable, which will be used for copying. So Control C. We'll also have Control V. Let's break. So let's see. So if we press Control A, all we'll need to do is just say input box. Let's create a new function. Let's call it input box. Select all, and we'll pass in our input box. Yeah, and let's define our function up here. So void. So then we'll say void input box select all. It will accept a input box C pointer input box. We'll then say input box selection input. Let's define our input data. T pointer input equals ampersand input box input. We'll then say input selection start is equal to 0 and input selection end is equal to 0. Then we'll say, no, not 0. Yeah, our selection start will be 0 and our selection end will also be 0. Or input selection direction will be changed to go towards the right. So input, we'll say input selection right. We'll then say our selection end will be equal to our input character count. And then we'll set our input selection count equal to our input character count. And that should be our select all. Let's do a quick test to ensure our select all is working. So if we type something, then we press Ctrl A, it's working. Let's say we set our cursor at the in between H and E right here, as you guys can see. Then we press Ctrl A. Oh, we forgot to set our cursor position at the end. So let's fix that issue. So in our input select all function, we'll say input cursor pos is equal to input character count. Alright, so let's recompile our code. Alright, so how are you today? Control A, it works. Let's try to move our cursor in between how and R. Press Control A, our cursor should move to the end. Nice. So if we press backspace, you can see it works. You can type I am doing great, Control, let's move here and let's press Control A. We hit backspace, it deletes everything. We can say, how are you? It looks so cool, guys. I am doing great. Wonderful. Alright, so now that we have done that, oh, also guys, now that we have done that, let's implement Ctrl C. So for Ctrl C, we'll call our input box get selection data function on our input box, and it will return a char pointer. So we'll have a char pointer selection data. We'll then say if selection data, then we'll say SBL set clipboard text, and then we'll pass in our selection data. And that should be it for Ctrl C. For Ctrl V, this is all we need to do. We just need to call our input box add input data function, and then we pass in our input box. But before that, we'll need to get our clipboard data. So we'll just say char pointer clipboard data is equal to SBL get clipboard text, and then we'll say if clipboard data, then we will call our input box add input data function, and we'll pass in our clipboard data. And we also need to free our clipboard data variable, guys, because SDL will allocate memory onto the heap. And we also need to do this to our selection data because we're allocating memory on our heap as well. So we free our selection data, and let's recompile our code again. So let's see if it works. Alright, so we'll type hello, how are you today? So if we press Windows V, if we're on Windows, you can see my clipboard is empty. So we'll press Ctrl A, and then we'll press Ctrl C. Let's check our clipboard now. So alright, so if I press Windows V, I don't know if you guys can see my clipboard, but it has in our text, it says hello, how are you today? And let's try to press Ctrl V. It works. Ctrl A, backspace. If we press Ctrl V, it works. Ctrl V again, it works. Ctrl A, backspace. Ctrl V, Ctrl V. Let me show you guys something cool now. So if we open up another text edit, alright, so VS Code is already a text editor. Let's try to copy something from VS Code, and let's try to paste it in, and let's see what happens. So we copied it. If we check our clipboard, sorry, my bad. So we check our clipboard. Hold on, what's going on? Yeah, if we check our clipboard, we can see we copied everything. So we'll press Ctrl V, And you can see it literally pasted everything in there. So we can press Ctrl it, can delete everything. Wait, what if we try to send a message? Yeah, it literally has case SDLK, has in all the bytes and stuff. Yeah, so we can literally copy stuff. Let's try to copy something else. Let's copy like this, and let's paste it in. Yup, it literally works, guys. You guys can see it. Let's copy this input box clear, then paste it. We press enter, and then we'll then copy this break, and then press enter. Man, it literally works. Alright, so now that we have done that, there's an issue now, because let's with our selection, because if we run our program and let's say we type hello world, then we select comma, then space, then W, and then we try to type something, it doesn't delete whatever we selected. So let's fix that issue. So right here where we're taking text input, you know what, let's create a function that allows us to delete our selection. So we'll say void input box delete selection input box t input box. We'll then define an input data t pointer input ampersand input box input. We'll then say, yeah, we already implemented that, like literally right where our box space is, so we can literally just copy right here. We can literally just copy this, and then in our delete selection function we can just paste it. And let's format it nicely. Wait, let's try to get multiple cursors. Wait, hold on. Wait, so let's add multiple cursors. Alright, so if we box space now, alright, so yeah, we don't need to add break there again. Yeah, that's all we need to do. Alright. Alright, let's turn this delete into a Boolean variable. So, to return a Boolean, I mean. So if we deleted any selection, we'll just return true. Otherwise, we'll just return false. So now, in our box space thing, we can just simplify all of this, and we can just say if input box delete selection input box, then we can just break right here, and then we can literally just alright, so okay. Yeah, whenever we type something now, we can just say if input box, we don't need to do that, we just call input box delete selection input box, delete selection input box, and then we just add our input data. And then we'll do the same thing for our control V as well. We'll say if input box delete selection, so if our clipboard data is true, then, or it's not null, then we'll call our delete selection function on our input box. And this looks good now, guys. So let's recompile our code again. And let's test it out. So if we type hello, how are you? And then we try to select something. Let's try to paste something from our clipboard, where we'll paste a break. And then we click Ctrl V, you can see it deletes our selection. If we select our text and then we try to type something, let's hit type a comma, then space, you can see it deletes our selection. Alright. So here's what we are gonna implement next. Wait, let me do a quick test, guys. So if I rerun the script, I type hello, then I press Ctrl A, and then I type something like backspace, it still works. Hello, exclamation mark, Ctrl A. Let's type something like great. It works. Alright, so yeah, our application is working like how it's supposed to, guys. Okay. Yeah, everything looks good now, guys. Wait, I just realized something though. In our clear function, oh, wait, it looks alright to me. It looks good. It looks pretty good, guys. Okay. Let's see what else we can implement now, guys. So let's say we wanted to have emojis. So you can see we have emojis. We want to input emojis and all of that. Currently, in our application, if we run our application and we press Windows dot, you guys can see it here, and we type something like this. It isn't displaying our emojis properly, and we'll need a font that support emojis and all of that. There are multiple ways to implement emojis images within our application. We can use raw images like PNGs and all of that, or we can use fonts that already have emoji support. Because Roboto, I'm not sure if it supports emojis, but let's implement multi-byte sequences within our input box system. So we'll go in our upstrings.c and we'll open up our upstrings.c and our upstrings.h header file. And let's focus on this for now. So we'll implement a char pointer string get UTF-8 char, and it will take in a const char UTF-8 string, and it will essentially extract each UTF-8 characters from our string. Because currently we're just handling ASCII data, but we want to handle emojis and other non-English like characters. So we will implement this right now. So on Linux, there are a few functions that we can use to extract UTF-8. So there's one like mbr. Yeah, let me open up my WSL terminal. Alright, so it's WSL is getting initialized. Alright, so let's open up our mon page. We'll say mon mbr 2wc, and this just converts a multi-byte sequence to a wide character, and it's included in wchar.h header file. So let's open up vim/user include wchar.h, and let's see the functions that we have. So let's write mbr for multi-byte. Alright, so you can see there's a mbr. So this writes a wide character representation. Okay. MB state. Alright, so we want one that like can extract Unicode characters. I think in Windows there is a get wide thing. Win32 in the Win32 API. Wait, there's a get wide char or something like that. Yeah, we need this documentation, guys. Right, so wait, there should be a MBR get WC or something like that. And alright, mon wide. Wait, let's scroll down in our mon page. So the main case for this function is when S is not null and PWC is not null. MBR2WC function inspects at most n bytes of a multi-byte string. Starting at S, extracts the next. Okay, this is what we need, guys. MBR2WC. Alright, yeah, so let's open up our browser again. And let's type MBR2WC equivalent Windows. Let's type Win32 API. Oh, Windows has it. Nice. This is cool. Alright, so we'll use this function, guys, to probably extract our Unicode stuff. So let's do that right now. So guys, I remember something. So all we need to do, since UTF-8, right, it is a 4-byte encoding, right? Here's what we're gonna do. So we'll use our MBR2WC function whenever we're on Linux, which is included in our whr.h, and we will essentially determine the number of bytes that we need to extract using that function, because it says MBR2WC returns the number of bytes parsed from the multibyte sequence starting at S. Right? So let's start implementing this. So we'll create some other functions, guys. We'll have a char pointer, string get UTF-8 char underscore Unix like. We'll have a const char pointer UTF-8 string. Right here we'll have a size t pointer index. This will also accept the index as well. And we'll have one function for Linux, and we'll have another function for Windows. Oh, and it will also pass in a size t length. So the length of our UTF-8 string. Then we'll then say, let me just copy this and move it down here. Yeah, within our get UTF-8 char function, we'll also accept a size t UTF-8 string length. We'll then say if def underscore win32, and we'll do a hash else and a hash and if. So we're essentially detecting if we're on Windows or Linux. So if we're on Windows, we'll use our string get UTF-8 char Windows function, which will accept a UTF-8 string, then our index, then our UTF-8 string length, and then we'll say string get UTF-8 char Unix like. So if we're on Linux or Mac, for example, we'll use that function. We'll also define a char pointer, UTF-8 char up here. And we will set it to null. And then at the end of our function, we'll just return that UTF-8 char. We'll then, inside of these preprocessors, we'll say UTF-8 char is equal to that. We'll say UTF-8 char is equal to that. And let's define our Windows extraction function. So guys, we'll just get our current index that we're at, and we'll check the bytes, the start bytes from our current index. So we'll say if UTF-8 string at or index is equal to 0x ampersand 0x80, and 0x80, guys, since if we open up so ASCII, guys, it has like, let's do a mon ASCII here. So ASCII can see it goes up to 7F right here. So it has like 128 characters in total. So 0x80 is 128. And we'll say, so this means if we do something like 0x0 ampersand 0x80, and if we do 0x80 right here, wait, 0x7f, and it is equal to 0, this means our current text is ASCII byte. we'll define a variable up here. Let's call it numbytes. We'll set it equal to 0 for now. And right here we'll set our number of bytes equal to, let's say, 1. And then we'll then do another check. We'll say for UTF-8 string index, because we'll have 2-byte characters as well. Percent so like for emojis that would be like 4 bytes, right? So if we do a Windows dot on our keyboard and we input something like this, for example, and we do a ORD in Python, then we do a hex, our start byte is 1F right there. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do, guys. Here's what we're gonna do. So guys, let's open up our web browser real quick. We'll search for UTF-8 Alright, we need a 2 bytes table. Alright, so let's open up this website and see what's going on. So here are there. Alright, so these are just for ASCII characters. Okay. So we want a 2 byte chart, because we have already validated the ASCII, you know. So we want to validate the rest of the multi-byte characters. So we're just gonna be checking the start character of each UTF-8 byte, and then we're gonna see if it's in the correct range. So let's do it for the 2 bytes thing now. So 2 byte characters. And we want to see like the maximum starting byte. So DF is the maximum starting byte of our 2 byte character sequence. So I'm just gonna open up this Python interpreter and do a basic calculation. So if we have DF, that means if we add 1 to it, we convert it back to hexadecimal, we'll get E0. So if we do 0x df and we AND it by 0xe0, then we'll get 192. If we convert that to hexadecimal, we'll get 0xe0. So let's add this to our C code. So we check our start byte. We'll say if our UTF-8 strings at our current index, we'll do a bitmos AND 0xe0. Then we'll set our number of bytes equal to 2. Only if we get this output. Only if we get if it's equal to 0xe0. Alright, so essentially what we're doing, guys, we're just getting the start byte and checking if it's within the range based on our byte sequence, you know. So we'll do it for 3 byte characters. Now we'll say else if UTF-8 string index %. So let's go in our table and let's look for 3 byte characters. So E0 is our start byte. Yeah, let's keep scrolling all the way to the end. Let's wait for this to load. Yeah, we just want to get like our last start byte for 3 byte characters. Yeah, once we get that, we'll be good to go. Alright, let's keep scrolling. Yeah, let's keep scrolling all the way. It's still rendering, guys, within our browser. Still rendering. But we want to go all the way down to the bottom just to get our last start byte. Alright, so here we have EF for our last start byte. So now that we have that, we'll write 0xEF. That means FF will be our last byte. Yeah, EF is our last byte, so if we add 1 to that, we'll get 0xFF. Or no, 0xF0. So now we can just say hex 0xEF, and if we AND that by 0xf0, we should get E0. So now we can just say, if we will just fund this by 0x f0 and we'll check if it's equal to E0, and if that is true, then we'll set our number of bytes equal to 3. We'll do it for 4-byte sequences now. And we'll do it for, so we'll need to get our last sequence for a 4-byte UTF-8 character. Wait, can we just search that up? Last start byte for 4-byte UTF-8 character. Just go all the way down. Alright, so here we have it. So F0 is it. F0 is it. So we'll just take F0. We'll add 1 to it. Then we'll say hex. We'll get 0x f1. So if we do 0x f0 and we end it by 0x f1, and we do hex on that, we'll get 0x f0. So we type 0x f1 right here is equal to 0x f0. Then we'll set our number of bytes equal to 4. Otherwise, it means this is an invalid UTF-8 character. So we'll just return null right here. Let's define a char pointer up here, and let's call it UTF-8 char equal to null. And once we have done that, at the end right here we'll say UTF-8 char is equal to malloc num bytes plus 1 and then we'll say UTF-8 char index num bytes is equal to null, and then we'll just say str and copy UTF-8 char and then we'll get our UTF-8 string plus our current index, and we'll specify the number of bytes we'll copy into that string that we allocated. So it will just be the number of bytes but we'll only copy as long as our UTF-8 char is null, or we've successfully allocated memory. So now we implemented our Windows function. The last thing we need to do is just return our UTF-8 char. But here's what we're gonna do. Each time we call get UTF-8 char, we're gonna increase our index. So we'll say index plus equal to our number of bytes minus 1 Alright, and let's implement our Linux function now. So to implement our Linux function, we're gonna be using this mbr2wc function. This means we're gonna need to have a mbstate_t variable. We're gonna need to have pass in our string to mbr2wc. Also, we need to do a few validation checks, guys, because we don't want to increase our index past our UTF-8 string length. So we'll do this only if our index is less than our UTF-8 string length. Wait, if it's greater than or equal to our UTF-8 string length, then we'll just return null. We'll also do it for our Linux one as well. We'll also define a UTF-8 char here for our Linux. So we'll return that UTF-8 char at the end. So mbr2wc, let's see how we're gonna implement that. So in our up strings, we're gonna do a hash if not defined underscore hash if def underscore win32. Then we're gonna hash define underscore if not defined underscore win32. So if we're not on Windows, then we'll include wchar.h. But I think MSys already has wchar.h. Yeah, we already have it. So we can just include wchar.h, to be honest. And we can use our mbr2wc function. Yeah, mbr2wc. Alright, so for now, we'll just pass in our UTF-8 string. We're gonna need to get the number of bytes, so we'll have a size t, num bytes equal to that. parsing plus our index right there. We'll pass in our UTF-8 string length. But we need to pass in our MB state variable. Now we just need to have a WHR T. WHR is equal to no. Okay, let's just make it be something like this. No. And do ampersand WHR for no. Wait, so we have an error here now. Alright. Wait, so we have the size in bytes, we have all of those parameters there. So now we actually need to get this UTF-8 char. Alright, so let's do that now, guys. Alright, so here's what we're gonna do, guys. Wait, hold on, I made a mistake right here. This shouldn't be a pointer, it should just be a WHRT. Set it equal to null. The number of bytes, we'll only do this like this. We'll say if our index is less than our UTF-8 string length, then let's define our size t num bytes up here. We'll set our number of bytes there, and then we pass in our MB state variable. We'll then say UTF-8 char is equal to malloc number of bytes plus 1 plus 1, and then we will say if UTF-8 char down here, we'll say UTF-8 char num bytes, we'll null terminate or string, then we'll say str and copy UTF-8 char, then we'll pass in our UTF-8 string plus our start index. We'll then say we'll copy the number of bytes, and this should be our Linux function. Alright, so now let's try to test out our get UTF-8 char function, guys. Yeah, we can also close our web browser now. don't need that. We can also close our terminal here. And let's test out or get UTF-8 char function. So we're gonna close all of this for now. And let's open up our inputbox.c file. We'll go down, we'll go into our or add input data function, and right here we'll replace this with string underscore get UTF-8 char. It's not defined. That's because we forgot to define that prototype within our header file. So let's define it. Alright, so now we can just pass in our data, and then we can pass in our current index meanwhile we're iterating. Then we can pass in our data length, and that should be it. Wait, let's, I think, yeah. Oh, we forgot to also do something, guys. So we get our number of bytes, right? But we also need to increment our index. Right? So we'll need to increment our index. So we'll say index plus equal to our number of bytes. Alright. So now, if we rerun our build script, let's see what happens. Alright, so we have some errors. Alright, so implicit declaration of okay. Let's fix that issue. It's because we need to move these up above here. And let's rerun our build script. Alright, so if we try to press Windows dot and we enter some emojis, let's see what happens. Oh, nothing happens. Oh, we type something, nothing is happening. Wait, that means our function is not working for some reason. Why is that? Why is that? Alright, let's go back to here. Let's do a printf modulus s UTF-8 char colon parsing our UTF-8 char. Let's rerun our build script. compile our code, we'll then write hello, and everything is null. So let's see why this is null. We set our number of bytes there. So if we set our number of bytes there, we're calling strncopy. We set our index. So this is our ASCII, this is our 2-byte thing, character. Wait, is our number of bytes getting set? Number of bytes equals to so if we type H, oh, it's not getting set. That means, is this statement being executed? Else is being executed. If we type F, yep, else is being executed. So why is that? That means we made a mistake somewhere. Let's see what's going on. So I'm gonna do my calculation because it's not detecting ASCII byte for some reason. So if we have 0x, alright, so let's say we have the character A in ASCII. So we have 0x61. 0x61 % 0x80. We're supposed to get 0, right? Wait, let's do a printf mod C. Yeah, printf mod C, UTF-8 string, index char : new line, and let's recompile our code, and let's see what happens. So if we type F, it prints out our character F. Okay. Yeah, we're ending it. So A would be, what, 65 in ASCII? Oh, but it's common A we type, so we type hex hard A. We have 0x61, we end it by 0x80. Oh, I see what's going on. We need to wrap this into parentheses, guys. We need to wrap all of these into parentheses, because the way C interprets this, it's checking if 0x80 instead is equal to 0 instead of doing our AND calculation first. So it's just like the order of operations. So now if we recompile our code, it should work. It should work now. So if we type F, there we go. If we try to input some emojis, it will not display. And the reason for this will be because we don't have a font to represent it. We don't have a font to represent those characters. To actually show you guys that it's working, I'm gonna download a font. There's a font called Symbola. Symbola font, and it supports Unicode stuff, like I think. So let's download this Symbola font. Alright, so let's open up our Symbola font. And let's just copy this Symbola. And we're gonna go on our desktop and paste it in our project folder. So now guys, we can close our web browser. We're gonna go into our up.h and we're gonna define another font. So TTF font pointer, let's call it our inputbox font. And we'll have a int font size. Yeah, let's not do that for now. So we'll go in our up.c and we'll ensure that we open up our inputbox font. So up inputbox underscore font equals to TTF open font, and we'll open up symbola.ttf. Let's ensure that we close that font as well. So TTF close font up inputbox font. And in our init function that we call for our input box, we will change our font to be our up input box font. So let's test it out. So if we run our build.but, and let's try to type an emoji or something. So let's type. Alright, for some reason it still doesn't display. hold on. Let's go back to our upstring.c. Okay. I believe Symbola supports UTF-8, right? Wait, Symbola font, UTF-8. Alright, so yeah, so it should work. Let's check our render characters function. Okay. Okay. Let's recompile our code and see what's going on. So we type hello world. You can see the font is different. Type Windows dot. If we type this, it's given that for some reason. We type this, it's given that. Why is that? Yeah, but it's still extracting the UTF-8 characters properly. But why isn't our font displaying those emojis for some reason? It is supposed to. Okay, let's see what's going on. As we call TTF. Okay. Set font size. Okay. Wait, why isn't it showing our emojis for some reason? Wait guys, so let's do a quick test for a second. Cause this should work. This should work. Oh, wait a second. If we go in our inputbox.c and then our render characters function, we're using render text blended. So it should be render UTF-8. It should be render UTF-8, guys, instead of render text. So if we rerun our code, our emojis should start displaying. Let's see. So if we press Windows dot and we type in an emoji, you guys can see it's displaying. Alright, now we need to modify this a bit as well to fix that issue where it stretches. So instead of doing TTF size text, we'll use TTF size UTF-8. And let's recompile our code. Alright, so if we do Windows dot and we type Windows dot, we type in an emoji, select a bunch of them, you guys can see it's being displayed. Nice. Hello there. Alright, now let's do it for our message list, you know. Yeah, we can remove this print or debug statement, and we'll use our up input box font. Rerun our build script. So if we type hello, how are you, press Windows dot. Wait, let's press enter. I'm doing great, bro. And let's do a Windows dot. And let's select this emoji. And then let's hit enter. Oh, yeah, we need to change that. So in our message list display function, we need to update all of this. So we're using TTF size text right here. So we'll update it to TTF size UTF-8. And we'll do this, yeah, TTF size UTF-8. And we'll change our render function for rendering the text to UTF-8 as well. So if we recompile now and we run our build script, we type hello, and then we press Windows dot, then we select a bunch of emojis, then we do an exclamation mark there, then we press enter. You guys can see it displays as a message. How are you? Let's hit enter. Let's say, let's get a world emoji. So we can type world, and let's select a bunch of these worlds. Alright, and if we type hello world, you guys can see our emojis displaying. Now if you guys notice, these emojis, they don't display with correct colors. So there's multiple ways we can get around this, but I'm not gonna focus on that in today's video. instead we're just focusing on having a basic, getting the basics working. Yeah, so if we want to implement stuff like colored emojis, there's multiple ways we can do it. We can implement we can use PNG images. We can also use their fonts like Twitter emoji and I think note emoji as well that we could use for displaying colored emojis. But we're not gonna focus on that in today's video. So I think this will be it for today's video, guys. Also, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Please subscribe and please like the video. and also comment down below. You guys can recommend a name to me as well, because you can see it's just called Shut Up right now. So in the next video, guys, here's what we'll do. We'll implement a chat server, right? So we'll get into the networking stuff now. That's where the real communication is gonna start happening. So we can, send messages between different computers and all of those stuff. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next